The palace of the Zarin Empire was a place of shining towers and crystal bridges. Light from the suns flowed over its walls, making it look like it was built from living stars. Soldiers of many alien races guarded the gates, their armor bright, and their faces proud. Among them walked a single human, dressed in plain armor, carrying no more than a simple blade. His name was Tomas. Tomas had never thought his path would lead here. Humans were not common in the Zarin Empire. They were often seen as weaker, too fragile for war, too simple for politics. Yet, by a strange fate, Tomas was chosen to serve as a guard in the palace itself. And not just any post, he was to stand watch over the only daughter of the emperor. The young princess Mira. Mira was known across the empire. Her beauty was praised. Her sharp mind feared, and her future guarded carefully. Many warriors wished for the honor of protecting her, but the emperor had chosen differently this time. A human would stand at her side. Whispers spread quickly through the palace halls. Some laughed, saying the emperor wished to amuse himself. Others thought he wanted to test the human's limits before sending him away in shame. When Tomas first entered the princess's chamber, Mira was seated by the high window, her long silver hair catching the sunlight. She turned to see him, her eyes sharp like crystal blades. She did not smile. "So, this is my new guard," she said in a voice calm yet curious. Tomas bowed his head. "I will serve as commanded." There was no pride in his voice, no attempt to impress her. He stood quietly, waiting. Mira studied him for a long moment. He did not shift under her gaze. His armor was plain, his hands rough, his eyes steady. Unlike the proud alien warriors who always boasted of their skill, this human seemed to carry no weight of glory, only the steady air of duty. Mira was not easily moved. She had seen many warriors, all trying to prove themselves strong enough to stand beside her. Some tried to charm her, others tried to impress her with power. None had truly won her respect. She decided at once that this human would be no different. Yet a small spark of curiosity rose in her heart. She spoke again. "Do you know why you were chosen?" Tomas looked at her, but did not raise his head to hide. "No, princess, I was told to serve. So I serve." His answer was too simple, too plain, yet there was no fear in it. Mira tilted her head slightly. Something about his calm tone unsettled her. The truth was, Mira had no desire to be protected by someone she could not trust. She was not weak. She had trained in the arts of combat, in the knowledge of her empire, and in the lessons of command. But the role of a guard was important. A guard's strength could be measured not only in his sword arm, but also in his heart. And so Mira made a decision in that moment. She would test him. She stood and walked past him, her long gown brushing the stone floor. Tomas did not move, but his eyes followed, careful, alert. "Guard," she said without looking at him, "your first task begins now. You will stand outside my chamber day and night for 3 full cycles. No rest. No food beyond what is brought, and no seat to ease your legs. If you falter, I will send you away." There was a silence in the air. Even the alien servants nearby looked shocked. No guard, not even the strongest, was asked to stand for 3 days without pause. It was meant to break him. Tomas bowed his head again. "As you command, princess." And with that, he stepped out and took his post by her door. Mira watched him go, a faint smile touching her lips for the first time that day. She thought to herself that the human would soon fail, just as all others did when faced with true trial. She expected to see him beg for rest by the second night. She expected him to show weakness, as all humans were said to do. But something deep inside her stirred, almost like a whisper of doubt. Could it be possible that this quiet man was different? As the sun set over the crystal towers, casting long shadows through the halls, the test had begun, and though Mira told herself she cared little, she found her thoughts returning again and again to the silent human standing outside her door. The fate of one man and the heart of one princess had begun to weave together, though neither could yet see where the path would lead. The palace of the Zarin Empire never truly slept, day and night. Servants moved through the long crystal halls, couriers rushed with messages. Guards patrolled in shining armor, and among them, Outside the chamber of Princess Mira stood Tomas, the quiet human. He had been given his task, 3 full days and nights without rest. No guard had ever been asked to do such a thing. The alien soldiers whispered when they passed by. Some laughed softly, sure that the human would soon collapse. Others shook their heads, pity in their eyes. But Tomas gave no answer. He simply stood, his blade at his side, his back straight, his eyes steady. On the first day, Mira did not check on him. She had many duties, and she wanted to see if he would remain without command. Hours passed. Servants came and went, carrying trays of food, scrolls, and silk robes. Each one glanced at the human standing so still, but none dared speak to him. By evening, one of the alien guards, a tall soldier with scaled skin and sharp teeth, stopped in front of Tomas. "You will not last," the soldier sneered. "By tomorrow night, you will be on your knees, begging for water." Tomas did not reply. His eyes remained forward. The guard gave a short laugh and walked away. That night, the palace grew quieter. Lamps were lit, and the crystal walls glowed with soft light. Tomas remained in his place. He did not move, did not lean against the wall. He simply breathed, steady and calm. Inside her chamber, Princess Mira sat by the window. She had expected by now to hear a knock, a plea for release, or the sound of her human falling. Yet there was nothing. Curiosity stirred within her, but she told herself to wait. She wanted proof, not just one night of strength. The second day arrived. The suns rose, pouring golden light across the palace. Tomas had not moved. His face was calm. Though his eyes showed signs of weariness, his legs ached, but he did not shift. A servant offered him bread and water, and he accepted with a small nod, eating quickly. Then standing again without pause. By afternoon, the alien guards had grown more interested. Some passed by just to see if the human still stood. Few even tried to distract him, speaking insults or waving their weapons near him. But Tomas gave no reaction. His silence became heavier than their words, and soon even their laughter faded. Mira heard of this. Her maids whispered about the human who refused to bend, who stood as steady as stone. She listened but showed no sign of her thoughts inside. However, she was unsettled. Why was he still standing? Did he not feel pain as others did? Or was his pride simply too heavy? That evening, she stepped quietly to her door. Through the narrow opening, she saw him there. His shoulders were tired, his face pale, but his eyes were fixed forward. He did not even notice her watching. She closed the door again without a word, her heart beating strangely. The third day came. Tomas had barely slept, only allowing himself moments of rest while standing. His blade always close. His body was sore, his throat dry, but still he endured. The palace buzzed with the rumor. Servants whispered in every hall. Nobles shook their heads in disbelief. Finally, near the end of the third night, Mira opened her door. She stepped into the hall, her gown flowing like silver water. Tomas straightened, as much as his tired body would allow. His eyes met hers, and though weary, they held steady. "You have stood here 3 full cycles," Mira said, her voice calm but curious. "Why did you not complain? Why did you not ask for rest?" Tomas bowed his head slightly. His voice was low, but clear. "Because I was trusted with this duty. If I left my post, I would fail the trust given to me. That, Princess, is something I cannot allow." Mira studied him in silence. She had expected excuses, perhaps even anger. Instead, she found only honesty. No pride, no boasting. Just simple words that carried more weight than the loudest speeches. Her heart stirred again. She did not let it show, but she could not ignore it either. This human was different. "You may rest now," she said softly. Tomas bowed again, then stepped aside. Yet even as he moved, Mira knew the test had not truly ended. She had seen something in him that challenged her own beliefs. She had thought humans weak, but this one had shown strength unlike any she had known. As she returned to her chamber, Mira found herself thinking not of her empire, not of her throne, but of the silent man who stood outside her door for 3 Days without complaint. It was only the first test, but already the story of Tomas had begun to change the course of her heart. The palace gardens were unlike anything Tomas had ever seen. Trees with crystal leaves stretched high into the air, catching sunlight and scattering it into 1,000 colors. Streams of glowing water wound between flower beds that shimmered as if painted by starlight. It was a place of peace, but beneath that beauty lay danger. The Zarin Gardens were famous, not only for their beauty, but also for the wild beasts that lived within. These creatures were not caged, but allowed to roam freely as a sign of the Empire's power. They had hides as hard as stone and eyes that glowed with pale fire. Even trained warriors walked carefully when passing through. On the morning after Tomas had passed his first test, Princess Mira summoned him to the garden gates. She wore a long robe of silver and blue, and her expression was calm, though her eyes studied him with quiet thought. "You have shown patience," she said, her voice even. "But patience alone is not enough. Today, we will see how you act. When true danger rises." Tomas bowed. "As you command." 2 alien guards flanked the princess, both carrying long spears. They glanced at Tomas with doubt in their eyes, but they said nothing. Together, the group entered the garden. For a while, they walked along winding paths, surrounded by flowers that shifted colors with every breath of wind. Birds with golden wings flew overhead. Mira walked slowly, her hands clasped in front of her, speaking little. At last, she turned to Tomas. "You are not to draw your blade unless I am in true danger. Do you understand?" "Yes, Princess," Tomas replied. The guards exchanged looks. To them, this command was strange. Any other warrior would seize the chance to prove strength by slaying beasts. But Mira wanted something else. She wanted to see if the human would obey, even when fear and instinct pushed him to act. They continued deeper into the gardens. The air grew warmer, and the sound of rushing water filled the air. Then, from behind a wall of crystal plants, a shape moved. Beast stepped onto the path. Its body was broad, covered in dark crystal plates that shone like armor. Its eyes glowed bright green, and sharp claws scraped against the stone floor. With a deep growl, it lowered its head, ready to charge. The 2 alien guards lifted their spears at once. "Stand back, Princess," one shouted. But Mira raised her hand. "No," she said firmly. Her eyes turned to Tomas. "This is his trial." The guards froze, uncertain. Tomas stood still, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his blade, but not drawing it. His heart beat faster, but his face remained calm. The beast growled again and lunged forward, claws tearing at the ground. In an instant, Tomas moved not toward the beast with an attack, but toward Mira. He placed himself directly between her and the danger, raising his arm as a shield. The beast struck, and Tomas braced himself. With swift motion, he shifted aside. Guiding the beast's charge past them, the ground shook where its claws struck, leaving cracks in the stone path. The alien guards tightened their grip, ready to attack. But Tomas raised his hand to stop them. He kept his eyes on the beast, calm but sharp. The creature turned again, its glowing eyes fixed on him. It charged once more, faster than before. At the last second, Tomas stepped aside and struck not with a killing blow, but with a swift, precise strike of his blade against the beast's leg. The cut was shallow, enough to slow it, not enough to end its life. The beast stumbled, roared, then retreated into the thick crystal plants, its heavy steps echoing until silence returned. Tomas lowered his blade and turned back to Mira. His breathing was heavy, but his eyes remained steady. "The path is clear, Princess." For a long moment, Mira said nothing. She had expected him to fight wildly, to try and prove his worth by slaying the beast. Instead, he had acted with care, protecting her first, sparing the creature when he could have ended it. His actions were not those of a reckless soldier, but of someone who valued life itself. The guards looked at him with new eyes. One muttered softly, "Strange human." Mira's gaze lingered on Tomas. Her heart was unsettled. She told herself it was only surprise, only the shock of seeing someone act differently than expected. Yet deep within, she felt something warmer, something she could not name. "We will return," she said at last. They walked back toward the palace. The air was quiet, though the memory of the beast's roar still echoed in Tomas's ears. When they reached the gates, Mira stopped and faced him. "You obeyed my command. You did not fight unless needed. Tell me, why did you spare the beast when you had the chance to strike it down?" Tomas bowed his head slightly. "Because it was only defending its home. Killing without need brings no honor, princess." Mira's eyes widened just slightly. "Honor," he had said. Yet his voice carried no pride, only truth. As she walked back into the palace, Mira's thoughts were filled with the image of the human standing before her, calm and steady even before a charging beast. She told herself again it was only a test. Yet in her heart, she knew it was becoming something more. The palace of the Zarin Empire was preparing for a grand feast. Long tables were placed in the Hall of Stars, a vast chamber with crystal walls that reflected the light of 1,000 glowing lamps. Nobles from across the empire were invited, each dressed in rich colors and precious jewels. Servants hurried between the tables, setting golden plates and filling cups with sweet wine. Princess Mira stood near the high dais where her father, the emperor, would sit. She looked across the hall and then turned her gaze to Tomas, who waited quietly by the doorway in his plain armor. The first test had surprised her. He had shown patience and he had shown courage without recklessness, yet Mira wished to see more. She wanted to know what this human would do when placed among the pride and laughter of the nobles. Would he crave honor? Would he break under scorn? She gave a quiet order to her servants. At the feast, Tomas would not stand beside her as other guards did. Instead, he would sit at the lowest table, far from the nobles and far from the emperor's throne. When the feast began, the nobles entered with proud steps. They filled the hall with voices, each one trying to be heard above the other. Music played from golden pipes, and the smell of roasted meats filled the air. Mira sat at her place, her eyes calm, but her thoughts fixed on the human. Tomas was guided to a wooden bench at the very end of the hall. His seat was low, and the food placed before him was simple bread, fruit, and a small bowl of stew. Round him sat servants and young guards of little rank. The nobles noticed this at once. Some laughed softly, covering their mouths with jeweled hands. Others shook their heads, whispering that the emperor's daughter was foolish to waste her time on such a creature. One noble even raised his cup and said loudly, "Look there. The princess's human eats with the servants. Perhaps that is all his kind are fit for." The hall filled with laughter. Mira heard it but did not stop them. She wanted to see Tomas's reaction. Tomas did not answer the insults. He sat quietly, breaking his bread into small pieces. He ate, slowly, calmly, as though no one else existed in the hall. When a servant beside him hesitated to eat, Tomas pushed half of his own bread toward her with a small nod. She looked at him with wide eyes, then smiled softly and accepted. More whispers spread across the hall. Some nobles laughed harder, saying he was foolish to share his food. Others frowned, unsettled by his calmness. Through it all, Tomas remained steady. He did not lift his eyes toward the nobles, nor did he shrink beneath their gaze. He was simply present, neither proud nor ashamed. Mira watched from her place. She felt something stir in her chest. She had expected him to look angry, or at least humiliated. Instead, he showed only patience. As if no insult could touch him, he gave away food, though he had little. He smiled quietly when the servant thanked him. For a moment, Mira forgot the feast itself. She forgot the music and the laughter of her people. Her eyes followed only him. As the night grew late, the emperor rose to speak, and silence fell over him. The hall. He spoke of victories, of trade, of alliances that strengthened the empire. All the while, Tomas remained in his place at the lowest table, listening with respect though no one looked his way. When the feast ended, nobles left the hall, in clusters of bright colors and loud voices. Mira rose from her seat and walked with quiet steps toward the far end where Tomas still sat. The hall was nearly empty now, only servants clearing plates and guards standing watch. "You endured their scorn," Mira said softly when she reached him. Tomas looked up at her and gave a small bow of his head. They are free to speak as they wish. Words cannot wound me unless I choose to carry them. Mira studied him. She could not find pride in his voice. There was no bitterness, no anger, only simple truth. Why give your food away? She asked. She was hungry, Tomas answered, and I had enough. The simplicity of his answer struck her deeper than any fine speech. Mira felt her heart beat faster, though she quickly turned away before he could see the change in her face. That night, as she lay in her chamber, Mira thought of the feast. She had tested him with pride and humiliation, yet he had shown no desire for glory, no fear of shame. He had remained calm, humble, and kind. It was then that she realized her tests were no longer just trials for a guard. They were lessons for her as well. Each one revealed something she had never seen before, something that unsettled her heart and made her question what true strength meant. As sleep came, she whispered to herself a truth she could not yet admit aloud. This human was unlike any other, and already she was beginning to care more than she wished to. The days after the feast passed quietly in the palace, but Mira's thoughts were far from quiet. Again and again, she remembered the sight of Tomas sitting at the lowest table, calm while nobles laughed, kind even when he had little to share. His face was steady in her memory, and each time she thought of him, her heart stirred in ways she could not explain. Mira had tested him 3 times. Each time, she expected failure. Yet Tomas never failed. His patience was unshaken, his courage steady, his humility strong. She told herself she was only curious, only interested in what made this human so different. But in truth, her heart was beginning to move in a way she had never known. One evening, Mira called for Tomas to meet her in the private garden behind her chamber. The garden was a place few were allowed to enter. Lanterns glowed softly among the branches of silver trees, and the sound of flowing water filled the night air. Tomas arrived as quietly as always, bowing his head. "Princess, you asked for me." "Yes," Mira said, her voice calm though her heart was racing. "Walk with me." They moved slowly along the stone path. Mira's hands were clasped together, but she could feel warmth rising in her face. She had spoken to generals, scholars, and princes without fear, yet standing beside her human guard, her words felt harder to find. At last, she stopped near the fountain where glowing fish swam in circles. She turned to him, her silver hair shining in the lantern light. "Tomas," she began softly, "do you know why I gave you these trials?" He shook his head. "No, princess, I only knew that they were commands, and so I followed." Mira looked at him with steady eyes. "I wish to see your heart. I wish to know if a human could truly serve with strength and honesty. You have shown me patience, courage, and kindness. You have shown me more than I expected." Tomas bowed again, his expression calm. "I am honored that I have not failed you." Her chest tightened at his words. He did not boast. He did not claim victory. He spoke as if all he had done was natural, as if his strength was nothing worth pride. That quiet humility drew her more strongly than she wished to admit. She took a small breath, then spoke the words she had kept hidden. "Tomas, I must tell you something. At first, I only wished to test you, but now I find my heart has changed. I no longer see you only as a guard. I have begun to care for you." The night seemed to grow still around them. Tomas lifted his eyes, surprise flickering across his face. For a moment, he said nothing, as if her words were too great to believe. At last, he spoke quietly. "Princess, I never thought such a thing could be possible. I am only your guard. I have no name among your people, no place among your nobles, yet in my heart I feel the same. From the moment I swore to protect you, I have wished not only to serve, but also to stay by your side." Mira's breath caught. She had expected silence, perhaps refusal. Instead, his words carried the same steady honesty that marked all his actions. Her heart filled with warmth, and for the first time in her life, she felt shy before another. They stood together in silence, the fountain's water sparkling behind them. Mira looked at him and said softly, "Then let this truth remain between us. For now, The nobles would not accept it easily. But in this garden, beneath these trees, I wish to know you not only as a guard, but as one who holds my heart. Tomas bowed deeply, yet his eyes shone with quiet light. It will be as you wish, princess. For a long while, they walked together. In the garden, speaking of small things, the places Tomas had seen, the stars Mira loved to study, the dreams they both kept hidden. Their voices were gentle, their steps slow. For the first time, Mira felt free of the weight of her crown. She was not the princess of the empire. She was simply a woman speaking with someone who saw her as herself, not her title. When the night grew late, Tomas returned to his post outside her chamber. Mira watched him go, her heart filled with both joy and fear. Joy, because she had spoken the truth at last. Fear, because she knew the world beyond the garden would not easily accept what had begun. Between them, still, as she lay in her bed, Mira smiled to herself. She whispered into the quiet night, "He is not only my guard, he is my heart." And though the stars outside burned as brightly as ever, Mira felt as if a new light had begun to shine within her, one that no test could ever dim. Whispers moved through the halls of the palace like wind through tall grass. At first, they were quiet servants speaking softly, guards trading glances, but soon the nobles carried the words on their proud voices. They spoke of the human guard, of how often the princess looked his way, of how she trusted him more than warriors born of the empire. Mira knew the whispers. She heard them even when no one dared speak them aloud in her presence. Still, she did not deny the truth in her heart. She had admitted her feelings to Tomas in the quiet garden, and though it was a secret they shared only with each other, the bond between them was clear to anyone with eyes to see. The nobles were not pleased. Some feared the human would weaken the honor of the royal house. Others were jealous, for many had dreamed of gaining the princess's hand. Among them was Lord Raylan, a tall noble with sharp eyes and a tongue quick with scorn. He had long hoped to stand close to Mira, but now he found himself ignored, his pride wounded. It was Raylan who first spoke openly. "If the princess wishes to keep a human at her side," he said at a council feast, "then let him prove he is worthy. Let him stand in the arena, where strength is measured not by words, but by battle." The other nobles murmured in agreement. The emperor, silent for a time, finally nodded. "A trial in the arena will end these doubts. If the human is unworthy, it will be clear before all." Mira's heart sank when she heard the decision. She wanted to protest, but tradition was strong, and the voice of her father was law. Tomas would have to face the challenge. That evening, Mira found him standing at his post, calm as ever. She told him of the duel, her voice tight with worry. "They will not fight fair, Tomas. They will choose a champion of great strength, one who has trained for years. You should not accept." Tomas looked at her, his expression steady. "If I refuse, they will say I hide behind you. If I accept and fall, then I will fall with honor. But if I stand, then no one can deny the truth." Her hands trembled, but she placed them over his. "I do not wish to lose you." He bowed his head gently. "Then I must not lose." The day of the duel arrived. The arena of the Zarin Empire was vast, carved from stone that glittered with crystals. Thousands of eyes watched from the seats above, nobles in their silks, soldiers in their armor, servants crowded in the high rows. The emperor sat upon the high throne, and beside him, Princess Mira, her face calm though her heart raced. At the center of the arena stood Tomas, his plain armor shining faintly in the sun. Across from him stood his opponent, the chosen champion, a massive warrior named Kavor. His body was covered in thick scales, his arms as strong as iron, and in his hands he carried a great double blade that few could even lift. The crowd roared. When Kavor raised his weapon, they expected the fight to end quickly. A human against such a foe was no contest. The signal was given, and the duel began. Kavor charged with thunderous steps, swinging his blade with crushing force. Tomas leapt aside, the edge cutting deep into the stone floor where he had stood. The ground shook with each strike, but Tomas did not meet the champion's strength head-on. He moved with speed, turning the larger man's power against him. Again and again, Cavour struck, his roars filling the air. Again and again, Tomas slipped aside, his blade flashing with small, sharp cuts that wore the giant down little by little. The crowd grew restless. Some shouted for Cavour to finish it. Others began to murmur in surprise at the human's skill. At last, Cavour grew tired. His swings slowed, his breath heavy. Tomas saw his chance. With a swift movement, he stepped inside the champion's guard and struck the hilt of his weapon. The great blade fell to the ground with a crash. The arena went silent. Cavour, weaponless, stumbled back. Tomas raised his sword, but instead of striking, he lowered it to his side. "I will not kill," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet arena. The duel was to prove worth, not to end life. The silence broke into a roar not of laughter, but of astonishment. Some shouted in anger, others in admiration. The emperor rose slowly from his seat, his eyes fixed on the human. Mira could no longer keep her heart hidden. She stood and declared, her voice strong, "He is my chosen guard. And more than that, he is the one I choose with my heart." The nobles erupted in protest, but the emperor raised his hand. "Enough. The human has stood his trial. He has faced strength with wisdom, and he has won. No one may call him unworthy again." Mira's chest filled with relief, though her heart still raced. Tomas bowed his head to the emperor, then looked toward Mira. Their eyes met, and in that moment, no crowd, no throne, no empire could break the bond they shared. The duel had ended, but what followed was only the beginning of a greater trial, the trial of love against the weight of an empire. The arena's echoes still rang in Mira's ears long after the crowd had left. She replayed the moment Tomas lowered his blade, sparing the great warrior Cavour. That act of mercy had been louder than any strike. It had silenced doubt, at least, for a while, and made her heart swell with pride. But when night came and the palace halls grew quiet, Mira realized the real trial was only beginning. The duel had proved Tomas's strength, but it had also stirred questions far greater than any single fight. Could a human truly walk among royals as an equal? Could love survive in the shadow of an empire built on tradition? Tomas stood guard outside her chambers that night, as always. His armor was plain, scratched from the fight, yet he wore it with calm dignity. Mira opened the door and stepped into the torchlight. For a moment, she only looked at him, as though reminding herself he was still there. "You fought for me," she said softly. "I fought for truth," he replied. Then he added, with the faintest smile, "and perhaps also for you." Her lips curved into a quiet smile, but it faded quickly. "They will not stop, Tomas. The nobles will find new ways to test us. Some may try to tear us apart, then let them try," he said firmly. "I have faced blades, shadows, and storms. I will face their words as well." The days that followed proved him right. Rumors spread faster than fire. Some nobles claimed Mira had been enchanted by the human. Others whispered that Tomas sought power beyond his station. Even foreign emissaries raised questions, for the empire's alliances often rested on royal bonds. The emperor, silent at first, finally called his daughter and Tomas to the Grand Council. The chamber was filled with nobles in fine robes. Their eyes sharp as knives, the emperor's voice carried through the hall. "Princess Mira," he said, "you have spoken your heart before the empire, and you, Tomas, have stood in trial and lived. Yet one question remains. What future do you seek?" The chamber grew still. Mira's heart pounded, but she stood tall. "I seek no throne for him, nor a crown, no change in your order," she said. "I only seek the right to stand beside him. My choice is mine, and my heart is mine. That is all I ask." Gasps rippled through the nobles, for rarely had a princess spoken so boldly. All eyes turned to Tomas, waiting for his answer. He bowed deeply before the emperor. "I am no lord, no prince, no ruler," he said. "I ask for nothing but the chance to guard her life and her happiness. That is the duty I have chosen, and it is enough." The emperor studied him for a long time. His gaze was sharp, but beneath it there was thought, perhaps even respect. Finally, he spoke. "Strength I have seen in you. Mercy I have seen in you. And now, humility I hear in your words. These are qualities rare, even among kings. The nobles stirred uneasily, but none dared speak against the emperor's voice. He looked toward Mira, and for the first time, his stern features softened. "You are my daughter. I cannot rule your heart. If this is your path, then so it shall be. But know this, the road ahead will not be easy." Mira lowered her head in gratitude. "I understand, father." And so it was settled. Tomas was no longer only a guard. He was acknowledged as the chosen protector and companion of the princess. Though many still grumbled in secret. In the weeks that followed, Tomas and Mira's bond grew stronger. They walked the palace gardens together, sometimes in silence, sometimes in quiet laughter. Mira no longer hid her feelings, and Tomas no longer held back his words. One evening, as the sun set beyond the high towers, casting golden light across the city, Mira turned to him. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "why fate placed you here among us, so far from your own world?" Tomas looked at the horizon. "Perhaps to remind your people that worth is not born in blood, but in choice." He paused, then added, "And perhaps to remind me that even in strange lands, the heart can find home." Her eyes glistened as she took his hand. "Then my heart is your home." The unexpected followed soon after. News of their bond spread beyond the empire. Neighboring worlds, once doubtful of humans, began to speak of them with curiosity. Some even sent envoys, eager to learn more about the race that had produced a guard who could humble a champion and win the heart of a princess. What began as whispers of scandal slowly turned into songs of wonder. Children in the markets played at being the human guard who stood fearless in the arena. Poets began to write verses of the princess who chose love. Over tradition. The empire had not fallen. The throne had not shattered. Instead, something new had begun to grow, a small but powerful change, carried not by decree, but by two hearts that had refused to be broken. And so, against all expectations, Mira and Tomas walked forward together, not as ruler and subject, not as noble and commoner, but as two souls bound by choice. Their story, born of trial and courage, would echo through the stars for generations to come.